Good morning, everyone. And once again, it is AISS 2021 Day 2, and we've come back with a kitty full of interesting sessions for you throughout the day today. And of course, we also have the DSCI Excellence Awards in the evening. And to begin with our today's proceedings, we first of all have a plenary session on PDPB and Cloud Strategy Program and its benefits. Now, to moderate the session, we have amongst us this morning Mr. Anil Nama, who is CIO of Cloud4C and Control S. So, without any further ado, I'm going to invite him on stage so he can introduce us to all the other speakers and panelists and take this session forward. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you for introduction. Hi, everybody. So I am Anil Nama. I am the CIO for Control S Data Centers and Cloud4C India. Today we have a very interesting topic about PDP and cloud strategy. As we understand, during the COVID times, we had rapidly adopted cloud, be it online sessions like the one we are having, be it in terms of our applications moving to cloud. The digital transformation has taken a main stage. And once you move the data outside from your own control in your own data centers, in your own IT rooms, onto the cloud, naturally it will lead to certain concerns around the privacy, data safety, and the use of data. The esteemed panel that is there along with me is here to discuss on this topic. Let me first introduce Pat Sherrill from Microsoft. Can you please introduce yourself, Pat? So while Pat joins us, let's look at a deeper level. The government of India introduced a draft bill somewhere in 2019. There's a round of discussions that happened, and we are in some time due to table the bill. So over to you, Pat.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Cheryl Pal, and I'm a senior counsel at Mastercard. As a part of my role, I look after privacy and data protection related concerns, and I'm in charge of the compliance program as well for APAC generally, but with a focus on India. So thanks Anil for introducing me. Uh, would would you like me to go on and talk about the privacy concerns, or should we introduce the rest of our panelists as well?
Let's introduce the rest
Yeah.
of the panels. Let's bring everybody on board. Mr. Keshav, can you please come in? So, Mr. Keshav is from Microsoft. Yes, please.
Thank you, Anil. Hi, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. My name is Keshav Thakur. I'm the General Counsel and Head of Corporate External and Legal Affairs at Microsoft India. And a core part of my responsibilities include policy and regulation, commercial, legal, product development support, compliance, philanthropies, and digital crimes. And I'll be very happy to share my perspectives on cloud strategy and the role of cloud in enabling organizations to meet their privacy and security compliance needs.
So, thank you for coming on board, Mr. Keshav. We do understand the power that flies in the cloud comes from your org majorly. Okay, can we have Mr. Deepak from Qualys? Can you please introduce yourself, sir? Yes, Mr. Deepak.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Deepak here from Qualys. I manage the platform security engineering and operations at Qualys. Thank you, DSAI, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of these August panel.
Thank you, Deepak. Can we have Mr. Srinath from SBI Life? Srinath ji? So while Mr. Srinath comes online, yeah. Yes, please, Mr. Srinath, please go ahead. So it seems Mr.
Can
Srinath
we
has
start?
some. Yeah, please introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah. Good morning, all. My name is Srinath Madali. I'm working as data protection officer at CLS.
Okay. So as you see, this panel that DSCI has selected has a varied mix of people. Shinaji comes from a organization that harvests the energy of the cloud. Nayakji comes from college which provides the governance to the cloud. Uh, Cheryl comes from the fintech that enables everything in cloud that makes it exciting. And Keshav comes from the infra provider of people who make this cloud. So we have all the right components in our team now. Let's move on to our first topic, which is for Deepak. There's a question to you, Deepak. We have an increasing focus on digital transformation and migration to cloud. Would you like to share your thoughts on this subject?
Yes, so Anil, prior to Qualis, I was there on the other side of the table with one of the largest banks in India, Axis Bank. We have interacted with you then, and you've been part of a journey for this digital transformation. So I think digital transformation in India started with Aadhaar when the government digitized the KYC process. Till then, the KYC process, I think all of us are aware of, create taking a photocopy of our KYC documents, attesting it ourselves or going to a government official for attesting it, and then submitting it to either for any government work, for banking, for telecom. Now, all of that changed with the Aadhaar coming in. The entire 100 billion plus population now has participated in this digitization exercise, having a digital identity which will be used in their day to day aspects. Now, these benefits of digitization is obvious, and it has impacted even the common man. That is what. Uh, Now, the second impetus to digitization came with demonetization, though it is a very controversial subject. But what demonetization did is it gave, it initiated a wave of payment solutions companies with a lot of, entities. If you see your mom and pop shop to the kirana person to the person on the street, everyone adopting digital payments, getting a QR code, and accepting payments on the mobile. So all of this was possible because the KYC of these people was already done through digital means. Okay. And so we all of us know the benefits of the Vahan app, wherein our license and our RC copy is digital. And I'll just share my experience. Yesterday I was taking my son to the school and I forgot my purse because I was thinking about my license and my RC and my insurance. Okay, my son reminded me that, Dad, you have uploaded this to an app that you've shown me, and you don't need to worry, we can show the cops that app. So now, in India, the purse has moved to the phone now. You can actually take the phone and do all your business. So, so now this is all of this information, okay, has to be hosted somewhere, and that is where the digitization of enterprises and services comes into the picture here. Now, we have all, if you see India's digital evolution, we have skipped the laptop and penetration, PC and laptop penetration, and we directly jump to the mobile adoption of mobile. I think the same has happened in the Indian enterprise in terms of trying to build their own infrastructure and data centers to adopting the cloud. And all of this has got amplified during the pandemic. uh, the dynamics of human resource and other cost benefits previously which were known to in developed economies because of their rampant outsourcing to the to the different subcontinents including India. I think we have also caught up on that, and I see a lot of spurt in digitization. And the digitization, this is supported by the cloud aspects and the adoption to cloud. and this has got accelerated over the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Deepak. So, if I note two, 3 points from a conversation, basically, the mobility of payments, that demonetization that you said, pointed to a simple point that you can scale the number of payments and reduce the delay in near real time. The same point you also made about the cloud, adoption of cloud. It has brought in the scale, it has brought in the timelines of that infra availability or maybe interconnectivity at the real time moment. But all of this, as you said, has data, and data leads to privacy concern. So, may I call upon you, Mr. Srinath, just to tell us what is this JPC report? What could be the new PDP bill? How would the government of India and the people who form the policy, what are your thoughts around such policies that may come out in the near future? Over to you, Mr. Srinath.
Yes. Uh, Thank you. So, while much of the draft bill remains unchanged from the previous version, but there are several notable changes have been made to specific provisions, and also new provisions have been added. Those include identifying categories of sensitive data. So, types of data like personal data, sensitive data, critical personal data, all these things have been identified. And then consent manager comes into the play, and also social media intermediaries. So this is also one of the notable changes have been taken place. And the other one is data localization and transferring sensitive personal data. So sensitive data can be transferred outside India and must be continue to be stored in India. So this was another thing which was come, and requirement to share anonymized data with the government. So, and also the recent JPC has confirmed that third party vendors is also accountable for the breach. So, data localization and transferring sensitive personal data by using cloud services. So, this will be a further how the cloud computing will come to handy, and also um, how the risk can be mitigated, and by protecting the data and its their privacy. And also the government has to come up with the um, impact of cloud computing as well as the privacy and personal data protection, and to analyze a legal framework for governing the privacy and personal data protection. So this is the main contention in the final draft of the.
Right. Thank you. So, as talked about by Srinath Sir, what we can see is as people are adopting these clouds. Let me talk to you a simple example. Some few days back, I opened a DMAT account. So, if you see my journey, I reached a bank site. From the bank site, I was given an application which I downloaded. When I went into the application, as I started to put in data, there was a third party processing of my KYC. From KYC, it went to generate my digital sign, which is another party agency. Then it went on to NSDL site for my Aadhaar verification. And finally, it landed onto the original banking app or bank's site. So this interdependence or processing of data by third-party vendors and how are they responsible for the data is a point which was pointed out by Srinath. The second point within that he has brought out or emphasized on very sincerely is that all will not have all the data. So it's the one rule will not apply to all intermediaries, and hence this data sensitization or classification in terms that what is the data that can traverse this chain, what is the data that needs to reside with one identity, and what are the rules governing around it. The data classification or categorization piece that Sinaji was pointing out is one of the other policy aspects that has been dwelled into. Data localization or data sharding or data with geofencing, those are aspects I believe that would already taken up worldwide. There is fair amount of literature, there is fair amount of technology at all platforms, at all applications to support it, to lock data with a geolocation. So these are the two new aspects that Shinaji brought up. With this, let's move ahead in our discussion. And because all this data finally resides on a platform, it has to go and be there. And who better than Mr. Keshav? So, Keshav, the question from me to you is, what are the key elements of a cloud strategy? And how does cloud adoption help organization meet their data privacy and security needs? And what the second part of the question is, what do you think is the regulatory compliance versus the traditional processes that we were following before this digitization era? Over to you, Keshav.
Thank you, Nilji, for that question, which I believe is on everyone's mind, especially with the rapid digitization and that we have seen in the pandemic, and pandemic is still not over, and we continue to see a huge opportunity for organizations to digitally transform themselves, adopting cloud technologies with the power of AI and big data. So any cloud, adoption is a journey for an organization. It takes time. It takes a lot of evaluation internally and external environments. And typically, any cloud strategy is often assigned by CEO or CIO, and then that team is develops a cloud strategy. And they're typically based on the assignments are based on the empowerment that that team has to drive the change, and importantly, that cuts across various departments and organization within any enterprise. So a cloud strategy a team typically defines what are the motivations for adopting cloud, and then what are the business outcomes that you would want to achieve. And in that, you have to also ensure that you validate and maintain alignment on business priorities and cloud adoption efforts, right? And in that, you have to also make sure that there is change management across the project. So when a cloud strategy is defined, it typically includes various roles, and sometimes people and organizations don't realize that this is not just the IT infrastructure team. It includes finance, it includes different lines of businesses, HR, legal corporate affairs, operations, enterprise architects, IT, application groups, and so on and so forth. So typically, if you think of the core elements, first, as I mentioned, you have to define and document your motivations. It includes meeting stakeholders and executives to understand what is it that driving us, how does it part of our digital transformation journey. Then, of course, you have to meet stakeholders to understand what are the specific business outcomes as part of the roadmap that you have, because you don't adopt cloud, at one go. You even decide which one remains on-prem, which one moves to the cloud, and what's your hybrid overall, business, considerations. Then financial considerations are very critical, right? Because you have to learn how to use cloud to make your IT cost structure very flexible, and then you have to have a business case to really think of how cloud will serve the business scope. Technical considerations, I think we all know. You have to really discover what are the technical flexibilities, what are the efficiencies and capabilities that help you build a business case to adopt the cloud. Lastly, I would say in the cloud strategy is the assessment that the team makes on the regulatory and policy compliance benefits. And that would depend upon the nature of the business, the location of the business, and the necessary regulatory requirements, and how does cloud adoption really supports that journey on staying compliance to laws, regulation, and global standards. So from as a hyperscale cloud provider, it allows us to see the evolving privacy and security regulations around the globe. right? And that allows us to understand in a centralized way, because the public cloud infrastructures spread across the planet, but also it has we are able to give a centralized view of what kind of controls are needed, what kind of regulatory compliance are required. So, basis the ever changing, we are seeing global regulation shaping up, industry, regional, national laws, right? And companies have to really think of how do you comply, through cloud, all these regulation and certifications, where they don't have to individually go and seek certifications, but leveraging cloud, you have that ability of a hyperscale provider to just, kind of keep the services compliant without you having to really independently, make that process. And with 90 plus global regulations, we are able to then bring a holistic understanding of what the requirements are. And the cloud enables, because it's a global infrastructure. We went through the journey of while we complied with GDPR, we were able to leverage our compliance norms to benefit customers across the globe. So that is the scale in which you are able to benefit from a hyperscale cloud. And these regulations keep evolving, and they keep changing. And I think we are already seeing how many countries are bringing national regulations, and even we are seeing regulations growing around accessibility, around sustainability. So it is just not about a check mark on privacy and security. There are other aspects of data governance and your role in contributing to other regulations that you need to comply with. And I think the cloud brings that capability, no matter which part of the world you do a business. And I believe almost all businesses are regional and global in different ways, unless you're talking about small and medium-sized, businesses who would have a different requirements for cloud. And I think that is what is critical to understand, that it allows you to first of all share responsibility, with the cloud provider, because 80% of the management of the cloud is in the hands of the provider, where you maintain 20%, where you control your devices, you control access, you control identity, and of course you have the control over where your data is located and who is accessing it and what privacy controls you need. I think all that flexibility and all those capabilities are inbuilt in the cloud. So when you think of the on-prem traditional environments, where organizations are solely responsible for almost every aspect of privacy and security compliance, with maintenance and operations and upgradation and keeping it updated, a huge chunk of that responsibility then and accountability falls on the cloud provider, and which leverages the global cloud infrastructure to keep you always available and reliable services to you. So I think we are increasingly seeing India is a hotbed for transformation. We are already seeing unicorns and startups. They're all cloud native, companies who learn and who are able to harness the power of the global infrastructure, but also the power of big data, as well as the AI, powerful AI algorithms, while ensuring that you stay focused on protecting the rights of the individuals, and you stay in compliance with the local laws and global laws, and you're able to then bring the best in a trusted environment to bring your services across customers wherever they are located. So I believe there's a big shift from earlier. It was all about, let me just keep my data in my own servers. I need to manage it, and you need to then have the right level of resources to make sure that you're in compliant, to then leveraging a global infrastructure to think about compliance requirements, but also deliver trust. That when you're offering services, you are on the right side of the law. And as they evolve, as we know that regulations continue to evolve, you don't have to really worry about, hey, is the services I'm using is already compliant, because cloud providers have to stay ahead of the game. So universally, they can then serve all customers across all the environment they serve. I hope, Anil, that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Keshav. So, key points from your conversation, what I could make out. Even though, as a service provider, I see people compelled to adopt cloud, but you very rightly accumulated that we should have a motivation and a business case defined as part of our cloud adoption roadmap. And once you define that, it is not limited just to the IT folks or the application developers. It's the finance which also has to understand what is how this subscription model, why is it going up or down as per campaigns, etc., which are done. So, and the HR has to understand that these type of systems, they have got a different needs. See, it's an organizational change or organization culture that starts to change. And to relate to our example, let us talk about very simple thing as Cloud4C. At one time, when Supreme Court of Indonesia ruled data localization, we had to run pillar to post in 2018 December, and by January put up a pod. Let's look our example totally different for our IRAP setup in Australia. We went on to Azure. There were 1900 some controls applicable to us. And as Keshavji was pointing out, more than 1457 were compliant on the platform itself. So we took the IRAP certified infra from them. So I ended up doing one fourth of the compliance work, which otherwise would have been a mammoth task and a go live for 6 months or 1 year, came down hardly to 2 months. And the third point, what he has been talking about is this new digital transformation or new age applications of unicorns which are coming up. That you can translate, let's say, very simple in healthcare. Latest API is FHIR. Now we have seen FHIR APIs available in the cloud. So whether it is old systems that needs to conform to it, whether it's the newer system, whether it's a proprietary system, for all these systems to talk, these API or the API economy is where we are all going ahead. And with that, let's thank you, Keshav, for that. So, Cheryl, the question to you is, what are the few key privacy concerns now that we are all in a connected world and we know that service providers providing something, we know compliance providers there's something, we know that there are a lot of regulations, and I need to involve, I can't do everything on my own as an organization, I need to have third parties involved. So given all that, how would you formulate a cloud strategy? What are your thoughts around that?
Thanks, Anil, for that, and also thanks to Keshav for setting that up so beautifully. The context of, how using a cloud service provider is more or less become inevitable in today's day and age, and how our service providers are increasingly making life easier for us, right, as organizations. So I'm going to take a few minutes to look at it from the other side of the line, not so much from the service provider side of the line, but to look at it from the point of view of a consumer of these cloud services, right? The organization that ends up actually drafting and putting together that cloud strategy, and what are the sort of privacy concerns you should bear in mind while drafting your cloud strategy, right? Ultimately, a cloud strategy is not it's not a cloud implementation plan. It's not a let's move everything to the cloud plan. It is to try and figure out, just as Keshav rightly mentioned, it is to figure out what is the business objective that we're trying to achieve by moving to the cloud, and really the intention of this entire sort of move to the cloud, the plan and the project, right? Now, a few concerns. Many of these are, of course, things that everybody knows, but I think there are a few things that we need to bear in mind as organizations who are considering adoption of the cloud, or even if you're already at a stage where you have adopted the cloud, or if you're somewhere between, it's still a good time for you to think of a cloud strategy and to still think about some of these privacy concerns, right? So the first one, and I cannot stress this enough, right, is to think about what regulations apply to you. Of course, everybody on the panel has already spoken of this, and to all our our audience who've been tracking developments on the legal side, you'll see that there has been a very noticeable trend in trying to regulate data transfers and trying to regulate where your data sits and how you can access them, right? So the first thing you need to really be thinking about is understand what regulations are really applicable to you. The law has traditionally always played catch up to technology. We know this. But we're seeing that gap between the developments in technology and the law being really formulated, that the gap is reducing, right? So our legislators today are quite astute. They know, they understand technology, they understand how it works, they're able to also identify pitfalls and flaws, and they want to provide for these, right? So it's paramount, and again, cannot stress this enough, that we look at what regulations we have in place which apply to our organizations and see how we can leverage what cloud service providers already have to make sure that we stay we stay compliant with these regulations, right? um, the other thing I want to spend some time talking about is ongoing due diligence. uh, this is something that should form a part of your cloud strategy. Um, while of course, your cloud service providers have their own controls in place, it is very, very crucial for companies to not just have processes in place to conduct a privacy assessment and an ongoing due diligence on your cloud service providers, but to also staff up. You will need to have personnel within your organization who are able to make this assessment, who are able to work with your cloud service provider, so that you can demonstrate that you have really done your due diligence. You've not pretty much just picked the first cloud service provider that you could think of, but you've actually looked at the kind of security they provide to you, the kind of policies they have, the kind of controls that are in place. And again, referring back to what Keshav said, now we have cloud service providers who offer us an array of controls that we can use. They provide us the flexibility to use them in the best manner that's suited for our organizations. So it's also up to the organizations to understand that, to really spend some time and try and customize that such that it works for you, right? You need to be aware of what are the controls in place, how would it work, what are the fallback options and things like that. Because if you don't, uh, that's going to be really, really tricky for you from the perspective of how you can make cloud work for your organization. um, Coming back to just a couple of points on which are very specific to privacy. Another point that a lot of people tend to oversee is records of processing and retention requirements, right? We have multiple laws which may have different timelines in terms of the kind of retention periods for different types of data. We also will most likely probably be seeing some sort of obligations in the new PDP bill, which revolve around maintaining records of during data life cycles. So it's important to also try and formulate how you're going to build that in to how you use your cloud service providers services, right? um, One other thing that you need to be thinking about is how you're going to really what needs to be in your agreement with your cloud service provider, right? Think about key terms like termination rights. How are you going to terminate it? What happens when you terminate your contract, right? What happens to the data? Do you still have access to that data? And things like that. You need to also think about uh, security audits that you need to conduct from time to time to make sure that you're still compliant, that you're okay. um, so yeah, I just wanted to highlight a few of these points. And over to you, Anil, again.
Thank you, Shil. So, Shil, thank you for educating us, all of us, on this system. So, if we just put your things in perspective, it's not only the transaction that we should focus when we adopt cloud. It's also about the data lifecycle, the controls which are applicable from all the regulations that bind that transaction or that entity. The assessment of these controls, the GRC capability of an organization to demonstrate the effectiveness of these controls, and finally the agreements to support third party termination, etc. for this. So, overall, thank you for these points. Let me put a question from my side to Mr. Naik. Mr. Naik, where in the compliance of these requirements, on-prem versus off-prem that we are seeing, uh, how do you, map it or join the dots in your case?
So, Anil, Qualys is a born in the cloud company. It's a SaaS only company. I think Keshav and Cheryl have set up the background aptly in terms of how a cloud infrastructure provider and then a cloud consumer, MasterCard is a cloud consumer, what is their perspective. Now, MasterCard is also our customer. So we get all kinds of queries from federal entities, enterprises, in terms of how do we keep this data safe and secure, because we handle a lot of sensitive information for our customer. We handle their vulnerability information, their configuration information. So, I'll talk about our side of the story, how we kind of, address these requirements. So, we started off in the US market, which is like a very mature cloud market. And in fact, US also has a very good cloud security standard, especially for if you're working in the federal space called as FedRAMP. Okay, so this will ensure that all cloud entities, if they want to do business with the federal entities and handle sensitive information, they have to do in a certain way, which is predominantly based on NIST best practices and guidelines. Uh, FedRAMP also has adopted a lot of best practices from all the other compliances like ISO, SOC, PCI DSS, HIPAA, GDPR, and they have brought all of this into that ecosystem. The ecosystem, like a PCI DSS ecosystem, is very mature with the cloud service providers and the consumers on the other side, and the audit agencies to kind of validate whether these cloud service providers are meeting all the requirements or not. So we started off with US. We started off with FedRAMP compliance. Gradually, what happened is European customers started asking for data centers in Europe. You mentioned about your use case in Indonesia, use case in Australia. We have gone through the same journey of meeting compliances of these regions and ending up having 10 global data centers. We started off with having our own data centers, and during pandemic it was just not possible to kind of put up a data center, acquire a hardware. We are all aware of the supply chain issues which are happening today, the chip shortages which are there. So just getting a hardware is at least 4 to 6 months away from from the point that you put an order, from to the time that you get this. So we adopted cloud for all our expansion over the last 2 years. And what we have seen is cloud, we are able to inherit a lot of these compliances from the cloud. So for our global requirements, what we are looking at is we are looking at Cloud Security Alliance standards. So they have a very robust mechanism of validating cloud security. And going back to the point of Cheryl, Cloud Security Alliance also has a section focusing on data security and privacy lifecycle management, so which is actually derived from GDPR. So what happens is, these when you are meeting these standards and when you are actually going to a public cloud service provider, you are inheriting a lot of these best practices, and your effort to comply comes down drastically. So we what we have also seen is during the pandemic, we have also seen the customers mature. So we have a model of on-prem and we have a cloud model. So we have some sensitive federal customers who insist on on-premise solutions, but we have seen a change of heart wherein government entities and all of these entities are now moving to the cloud wholeheartedly. Okay. Now, one very important aspect of cloud is when you're having your own data centers, we have seen a lot of our customers, disposing of storage and disks in a very quick and dirty way. Okay, they look at it like the garbage that accumulates in your garage. Okay, now this leads to a lot of data leakage and exposure of sensitive information of your customer. This does not happen in cloud, as data disposal is standardized, disk disposal is standardized. So what where I see is cloud forming a very strong solid anchor for all digitization and risk management practices.
Thank you, Keshav. So, point taken, point raised by Sharil and Keshav, and then supplemented by you that there are systems like CSA, FedRAMP, and IST which can provide this governance framework that we can adopt also for India. A question to you, Keshavji, because you are multi-country infra hosting. It's a question also from our audience. Let's say hypothetically, I am running servers in your cloud in US. And a country like India comes in and says, I want data localization. So, how do you comply with it? Do I bring all workloads back, or do I use some technology to ensure and provide enough assurances here? So, will I have to be disrupted, or do I have some working around it?
No, thank you, Anil, for that question. And of course, that goes to the aspect I was referring to, right? What are the regulations that are shaping up which require different, obligations? And I think Ashal was saying is whether it's deletion, whether it's data location, whether it's third-party request, which is law enforcement and other government entities. We absolutely are mindful of the data residency requirements that come as part of different national laws or like GDPR, requirements. And of course, I think we also will see what the personal data protection bill for India. And we are able to, with the increasing footprint that we have across data centers around the globe, we have probably the largest global infrastructure with 3 cloud data centers already in India, and we would want to grow them, is that we are able to then meet the requirements of localization. Right. So I think what the balance we need to make is what is the need of the regulation and what is the customer's business environment that requires transfer of the data, right? Because we also want to, I think the right balance of the regulation is about to not make it too cost heavy to run cloud services or make it too complex for organizations who have businesses across the globe when they require to access data residing in Indonesia or to in Brazil or to US. How can that seamless transfer of data can happen while the residency of where the data is at rest, could be defined as to where you want to be. In fact, we give complete freedom for our customers to choose which data center you want to choose. Do you want to go to Hong Kong? You want to in Singapore, India, South Africa, any country in Europe where we have data centers? They have the ability to decide this is the data I want to keep it in this country, right? And then you have these access control measures, right? So the location today, the data location and the data residency is that's the empowerment that the cloud brings. That it allows you to really configure your business needs, because data must transfer for business as well, but also the residency requirement that are shaping up. And we acknowledge that different countries do have, and different governments have different purpose and motivations behind requiring data residency. Some of them are purely privacy, some are national security and other sensitivities. And in that, even classification, Anil, right? General data versus sensitive data versus IP data, or to even critical data, right? Or trade secrets, right? I mean, you have to really you can't apply one rule to all data sets, right? So this allows the ability to really apply different standards and different regulations to different classification, and that is the power of hyperscale public cloud.
So, thank you, Keshav. So everyone, let's summarize our discussions. Let's start from the starting. So initially, we found out that due to demonetization or this mobile way of payments and the advent of cloud, a lot of data was coming online. We looked through Srishanji and we understood that this data needs to be categorized private. There are privacy things the life cycle has to be put in. It was further elaborated by Keshavji as to what is the possibilities in the various clouds or the infra underlying and how can you leverage it to be compliant. And the most important points which are brought out by Cheryl was a self-aware customer who needs to know what is the regulation, who needs to have the right agreements in place and should not be caught off hand. And overall, from the gist of the conversation, and as also pointed out by the esteemed panelist, uh, the government of India, with its astuteness, with its new generation, is trying to close this law enforcement versus the usage gap of technology. We are seeing this happening over a period of time, and that's what we hope that the new DPR will come in. It will give us further insights into how to handle, categorize this data, what are the regulations of the life cycle, what we can leverage from a cloud provider, what we need to be aware as a payment processor, what we need to do in our compliance tool, and what should I do or we do as part of our cloud strategy. So thank you all. Thank you all for joining. And with this, let me close the session. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Anil.
Mal.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Deepak. Thanks, Cheryl.